You know, she needs to sit on that. I disapprove of that. How dare you?
Roxy, can you sit down? This will be interesting. Oh, I guess I was recording the whole time. Hey there, it's us again. You clicked on our channel, so you probably knew that. This is the first part in our sort of build series about how we got in the tiny home that we're in, and Roxy's gonna sniff that camera. In this episode, we're mostly gonna be covering the choices we made before we decided on what type of house we were gonna get and why we did that, and the whole moving process, so that you can learn from all the crap that we shouldn't have done and that you can avoid if you're thinking ahead or you have someone's advice to take, so that whenever you do this, if you choose to, you have all of this information to go off of, because our process of getting the house did not, it didn't really go according to plan for, I would say, what percentage? I mean, definitely in the first part, almost nothing.
Yeah.
There was a lot of miscommunication and some very key choices that were made outside of our hands.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot of choice in some things, and when you're building a tiny home, your choices in general are probably going to be limited unless you're building it from absolute scratch. So we should probably go back to the beginning, and we're going to start with why we decided to move. Now, if you've watched anything on my channel, I believe at one point I mentioned that in December of 2020 I got sick with COVID, and it was not good. I was out of work for 5 weeks. I was working as a CNA at a hospital. There was me and 11 other people that were exposed to a patient that was positive, and when we were like, oh, okay, we're all gonna be out sick, they didn't excuse anybody's absences, and they refused to pay us for being out sick with COVID, which I was absolutely appalled by. Yeah. So I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't getting paid at all. And so he was the only one getting paid, and we were already kind of like pushing it at this point. And then I got a call from my manager that was like, hey, if you don't come back in, you're fired. And I was like, so you told me it was excused, which I found out later at this point it wasn't. I was still feeling like garbage. And so I finally go in, and I talked to him when I came home. I was like bawling my eyes out. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And so we talked to his family, and they were like, well, why don't you just come like build a tiny home or live in an RV on our property for a while, and you won't have to worry about it, like cheap rent, nice space, whatever you want to do. So I told my manager at that point when I came in the next day, I was like, okay, well then tomorrow is my last day, because we discussed moving. We agreed to it, and it was like a week before the end of the month. So I called the property managers and said, okay, at the end of this month, because we were month-to-month contract, we're done, we're moving out. And they were like, that's fine, and we'll give you an extra week so you can move out. So I went to my managers and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna be moving like almost an hour away at this point. I'm not gonna drive an hour to work, and I cannot work here anymore. I'm done on Friday. In which her response was, if you quit and don't do a 2 weeks work for me, I will tell any employer that calls to get a reference from you that you're a horrible employee, despite me being the best employee.
Did you get awards or something?
Yeah, winning multiple employee awards. Despite that, she was gonna blackmail me if I didn't finish my 2 weeks. I'm like, it's an hour drive. I have to get up then at 3:30 in the morning just to do everything and get there. So I cried a little bit. I called him. He's like, you know what? I will drive you. I know you're not comfortable driving in there. This is unfamiliar area for you. Which
was a sweet thing for me to do.
That
but
really was.
It resulted in us getting a rental truck to move all of our stuff. I don't have anything in my hand. Me moving all of our stuff in the house that we were staying in into a truck, moving it all the way to the property we were going to stay on, waking up really early, driving her to work, coming back, unpacking everything, driving that truck back, and then trying to unpack all of our stuff in a much smaller space that we were staying in while we did the whole process of picking what type of tiny home we were going to have. Because it was sort of a, make it or break it moment. We had to decide, are we going to try to go crazy with our finances and stay where we're at, or are we going to take the leap and figure it out as we go? Ideally, we would have planned this out a few months ahead, but it was pretty much, we made a decision, and within a week, we're already in a new space. And then from that point, it was, okay, now what type of tiny home do we get? Okay, so this is party bus 1. You all just took off. I just want to document. Sam's here. It's now, what time is it? 4?
Not sure.
4:20. And we have packed up 98% of everything that's in there, all the stuff that we're supposed to. We're exhausted. We ripped up the fence. We moved everything. My muscles are quite sore, and I'm gonna have to unpack it and everything tonight. So it kind of sucks. But yeah, this is exhausting, and I'm gonna go eat a lot of sloppy joes and pass out like a pig. Sound like a fun time?
I guess. Not necessarily the way you phrased it, but yeah.
And we discussed,
a lot of stuff.
would it be, I initially said yurts. I said that back in the apartments when we first got married, and she was anti-yurt at the time. I'd like to say she's come around to it.
I've seen some nice bigger ones. It was the smaller ones, I just didn't like it.
I showed her big ones. Let the record show. It's okay, people's opinions change. But we considered yurt, we considered van build briefly, but we knew we needed more space than that, at least initially.
Because we got this one.
We considered doing a tiny home on a trailer that you could move. We considered a couple prefab ones. We looked at cottages that are similar to tiny homes, but those are more luxury and almost always cemented into the ground. And then eventually we came to an agreement with my parents that we would pay off the shell, and then they would pay for, they would agree to pay for the basic amenities to make the house a house. Like, we were going to do a composting toilet, but they wanted a flushable one, so they paid for the plumbing of the flushing stuff, because we didn't want that initially, but they wanted it on their property. So we sort of split it half and half, but if we wanted something really nice and they didn't want to pay for it, we would pay the difference. And the idea was that way they get this for if we come back and visit years from now. We can come back and stay here, or one of my siblings can move in over here, or they can rent it out after a while. And we can also, I don't think my mother was convinced that we were actually gonna live in a tiny home and not kill each other. And we've been here for how long now?
In August it'll be a year.
Most of a year, and we haven't killed each other. And great space. This is the clearance my head currently has. Few spots right there. Keep going. Obviously, incredible little spot right here. Very spacious. Was gonna be my living room, now might be a kitchen. Kind of a bummer. And then my favorite part. The porch.
It feels like you're living in a dorm room because you have the basics. It's like a studio apartment. Like, if you're someone who's lived in like a 1-bedroom or a studio apartment and you really like that space and you can make it work, a tiny home will definitely work for you. And the definition of a tiny home, in general, by like law, I guess, is anything under 500 square feet. Anything under 400 square feet. But for us, because we also have a giant loft, it's like 530 or 540 square feet total. So the size of like a studio apartment.
Yeah.
But we ended up moving into a double car garage that was converted into a studio apartment by his parents for when you came back from the army. And it wasn't quite finished, so I would go to work and he would be working on painting it. They were doing carpets.
That's true. I forgot about that. Before we even moved in, I repainted the whole space that we were just going to stay in temporarily. Like a
darker, like mint green almost.
Yeah.
Like more of a muted.
If you've ever planted lamb's ear, it was that sort of. It has like a frosty undertone to it.
I like that color a lot, but
I'm kind of sick of looking at it after living here for months. That was a rough.
The only
period.
thing about But I mean, there was so much planning and it was so stressful and I was exhausted, and I was a long hauler from COVID where it took me about 9 months, maybe even 10, like September, October.
It took you a while.
Before I could actually breathe normal. Like, I went to the doctor in June, 6 months after I had COVID, and they're like, your kidney function is low, your liver function is low, you're getting heart palpitations, you got all this crap going on. And I'm like, thank God I quit where I was working. And I felt really bad because I could not do anything. I couldn't.
And the shell that we chose, which is a slightly bigger version than this, we thought, we were like, yeah, so this is going to be great. We'll sort of look for something like that. We'll shop around to see what we can find. We laid out what we needed. And then my parents thought they would be really nice.
Oh, your dad.
And they were like, we heard about something just like what you wanted, but slightly smaller. And they told us this after the fact, by the way. And they were like, so we drove really far away to look at it, and they offered it cheaper than we expected it to be. So we just got it, and you can pay for that. And it's going to be thinner than the one you wanted, which was a big reason we chose the one that we wanted, was a little bit more girth.
We chose originally like a 14 by 36, and this one ended up being like a 12 by 30.
Yeah, 12 by 30 something.
Yeah. Ours was wider.
And they thought they were doing something nice, but that's sort of like, that's a big choice. The shell you choose is a huge factor, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and we basically had that choice taken out of our hands, and it caused... I don't think there's really a word for it outside of maybe some Greek tragedies for the amount of familial problems that caused between us, just because it was like, they thought they were doing something nice. Hi, Mr. Motorcycle.
I felt bad afterwards, but in the moment, when I got a text message saying, this is going to be delivered in 10 days, and I was like, why would it be delivered in 10 days? That's not what we picked. We haven't discussed this fully yet. And then I showed him, and then he texted him back, and he goes, oh, well, I just purchased this. So he texts his mother, and she's like, I don't know anything about this. I'm getting off work right now. And I was like, it was a moment.
That was the second most frustrating part of this build.
Yeah.
And the other one will happen in a future episode, we'll talk about it, but it was that when the wind came in it,
Well, that happened even before that. Because we were building it.
Was that before the shell was delivered?
Yeah, the shed was before the shell was delivered.
We built a shed, and we got a metal one from Home Depot. And
scrap pile?
we built part of it, and then the sun started setting, and we just had the framework. And I came back out the next day after a windstorm struck, and it had opened it up like this, just sprayed it out and bent all the metal.
It looks like
so
a
badly that
flower.
there's a wooden skeleton that we built inside of it, and at one point just started like nail gunning the pieces of metal and foam filling it. I let out a scream louder than anything I ever did in the Army, and I was pretty aggressive then. I thought for sure someone was going to call the police. It wasn't like I'm frustrated and then there's something going on in the back of your mind where you're thinking about like your bills or like what you're going to eat. Every fiber of my being was rage and disappointment and frustration, where I felt it in my fingernails. And that was before the shell even arrived. That's how bad things were.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but that was also right after the snowstorm let up, because we had bought the shed, and then it snowed for like 2 weeks straight.
As a small update to our move and home building process, about a week after we moved, not even, we decided we were going to get a storage shed so we could utilize the space that we're staying in a little bit better. And then it started snowing. And we're expected to get anywhere from 7 to 12 inches over the next 3 days. It's not supposed to be above freezing for another week, so building the shed is on hold through Valentine's Day, which is going to make Valentine's Day a lot less romantic. What I'm saying is check the forecast before you do these things. The snow is cute, but the roads are so icy, we can't go out, we can't get help doing anything, and we're just kind of, I'm hauling firewood right now, so just trying to stay alive. Learn from our mistakes.
And then when it was like finally warm enough for the snow to melt, but the ground was still frozen, it was just one problem after another. And it's one of those things that, like, if you were planning to move into a tiny home, look at the ground, know what the dirt is made of, if it's soft.
Check your
or hard.
wireless provider too, cell phone and internet, to see if they actually cover where you are.
I mean, Wi-Fi, ground, and make sure you do it in a warmer part of the year. Because ours, obviously, we didn't really have a choice in. But
yeah,
if I could have, I would have waited until like March to start, because that would have saved so much stress and so much anxiety. And I'm like super OCD.
Yeah, I think probably our next episode will focus on the actual, like, this was step one of getting the house here, like the foundation, planning the layout,
That
like
took
how we
3
planned
weeks.
it. It took us, there were a lot of fights over how we were going to, and we had some pretty clever ways of being able to walk through it. We'll share all that with you in the next episode.
I think I was.
You
I
lost sleep and just tore through page after page. We got like erasable little drawing tablets because she was drawing so many layouts, like at night not sleeping, trying to solve every problem, that she was ruining all of my paper. That's
I
what it
went through
was.
like 2 notebooks. And then finally I found these like $10 kids like tablet boards where, you know, you push the button and then the green letters go away. And I'm like, awesome, this is great, because I would sit there and draw the layouts on it, because the person who did the plumbing and the wiring for us is a relative, and they're older and they're old school, and I'm a woman, and a woman trying to decide what to do was not going very well with this person in particular. I was trying so hard to be respectful, but at the same time being told that, oh, all she needs to care about is the kitchen, made me want to put my fist through that person's face, and he could tell the face he would make. And I'm like trying to be like, hey, we want the layout like
He's
this.
my favorite grandpa.
I know. I like him too.
That just means the other ones are worse. And they are.
But that in itself was difficult, because it was like, no, we're gonna do this, and I'm like, well, you're not living here.
Yeah. So I would just basically take her ideas and then be like, I was thinking about this. And be like, that's a good idea. Although he did admit there were things that I said were your idea, and he was like, that's a good idea. And he did admit he was just surprised that a woman could come up with such an incredible idea. Maybe you're gonna make him into a feminist in his 80 plus years of age. He's gonna finally turn the corner.
I know, I was so tempted to wear my shirt that said like feminist AF on it.
You have a shirt that says that?
I used to. I don't know where it is. I don't know if I got rid of it, but I had one that someone gave me once, and I was gonna wear it one day just to be like, I have ideas too. But I knew that probably wouldn't go over well.
No, I don't think it would have gone over well with
I'm
the
from
build
New York.
process.
This is like the country, you know, in the South. My strong personality was not gonna go over well, so I had my translator here with me.
Which meant I got a lot of
Angry, like, because when I get angry, my
Harley
New
Quinn.
York accent comes
You sound
out
like Harley
really
Quinn.
strong. I'm over here like sleeping 14, 16 hours because I'm still sick.
And I'm
It's all
sleeping 5 to 6
out. Yeah, I know.
because I was working my job as well as doing this.
Yeah, it was rough. It was really rough. So I mean, there's a lot you guys need to take into consideration.
Basically, are you willing to go insane for several months and push through that insanity knowing that there's something better on the other side?
Yeah, we moved it the day before anniversary, so that was awesome. I was really happy that we were able to meet that deadline, and thank you everyone so much for pushing that last 2 weeks to get everything livable.
You're welcome. That was me.
And I mean, people would just show up and start working on stuff, and it just scared the bejesus out of me. I would
Yeah,
wake up at
There were
like,
some boundary issues.
yeah, and we didn't have frosted glass pieces like on the front door, and it's the summer in the South, so it's like in the 90s and 100s. And
Well,
you
we
know.
can tell them all those fun stories about having the house when they get to that part. This is more about what you should know going into it, and then we'll give you more of a step-by-step of each level of the process in the future. Because I mean, like we even started doing like credit score fixing things to try and apply, because we were looking at a couple different, was it Tumbleweed?
Yeah, Tumbleweed Tiny Homes.
We were so close to pulling the trigger on that. We loved some of the stuff they had.
They really did. If it was half that price, we could have pulled it off.
Yeah, and their prices weren't terrible or anything. It was just like, well, do we want to apply for a loan for that? And then by the time we did this, they were like, oh, well, we'll get, for less money, you can have a house that will stay here for sure, but you can test out everything you like, and then you learn from that and can apply it to your next build. Or what my mom was probably thinking in the back of her head, once this dum-dum realizes this is just a phase, he'll go back to a regular house, and this won't be a problem. Unfortunately, I don't mind this. The only problems I have with this house are the choices that were made basically in a rush or because of unexpected complications that were mostly caused by their additions to the process. So, sorry, Mom. I'm a stubborn individual, and I know what I want. And I like living in a small, simple space that we don't have to basically never see each other and leave our dog in a cage all day because we're both working ourselves to death. I don't want to be 80 before I can start enjoying being married to you, or plot my murder of her. either one.
That would
I'm
be
open to
so easy
options.
because everyone who's watched any of my videos knows I have like 12 food allergies.
Oh, murdering you would be so
I know.
easy.
Put some soy sauce on something.
Oh, I
Dead.
already have so many alibis. Oh my god. Just remember that the next time you get an attitude. Remember, you're one piece of bread away from mortality.
That sounds so weird. Gluten doesn't kill me though, so it just makes me sick.
In the head.
We don't have to worry. I'm already sick in the head. It's okay. Anyone seen my striped jacket?
Anyway, enjoy watching us suffer so that you don't have to. And again, even planning a month ahead, preferably 3 months ahead before you make a move, smooths out the process. And the less number of people making creative decisions, the easier it is. So yeah, fixing your credit score by like 10 points or something can be the difference between this monthly payment for the house that I want is unattainable to, oh yeah, I could actually do that. I just need to, not do X, Y, and Z for the next few months to save up for it or start budgeting better. Whereas we were just like, oh God, now we have to jump, and then we'll deal with whatever comes next. Sort of hip fire it for the rest.
Jump first, think later.
Anyway, learn from our mistakes, please God, because I know we certainly did. And I'm gonna be honest, feel a little vindicated that 3 years later your team yearned. Like, I looked at Tumbleweed as well before we even met, and so whenever you suggested Tumbleweed, I felt vindicated. And then whenever you were like, yeah, yurts would be a cool thing for like our next thing, we could do something like that, I was like, I thought of this
Right
like
now,
2015.
we've been looking at Boxable, but I don't know.
Elon Musk is taking a long time with his internet. I don't know if I trust him with a house.
Yeah.
Watching like by the time this comes out or whenever they're watching this, it'll be like Elon Musk has made a whole city of tiny homes and become like a cyborg emperor of the universe that has to be stopped.
They keep saying that they have made like 1,000 of these homes, but I'm like, everyone who's commenting on like their posts saying, well, I've been waiting to receive one, and if there's 1,000, where's mine?
Well, they're number 1005.
Maybe, I don't know.
See you soon. Hopefully we'll be sane by then.